Let's continue with the chapter 5, the last chapter of ninth NCERT history. देखो हम लोग किसके बारे में बात कर रहे थे? हम लोग बात कर रहे थे, हम लोग पेस्टोरल्स की बात कर रहे थे. पेस्टोरल्स जो होते हैं, by September they began their return movement. On the way, they stopped once again in the villages of Lahul and Spiti, reaping their summer harvest and sowing their winter crop. Then they descended with their flock to the winter grazing around on the Shivalik hills. Next April, once again they began their march with their goats and sheep to the summer meadows. Further to Further to the east in the Gherwal and the Kumaon, the Gujjar cattle herders came down to the dry forest of the Bahabar in the winter and went up to the high meadows, the Bugyals in summer. Many of them were originally from Jammu and came up to the UP hills in the 19th century in the search of good pastures. This pattern of the cyclical movement between the summer and the winter pastures was typical of many pastoral communities of the Himalayas, including the Bhotias, Sherpas, and the Kinnoris. All of them had to adjust to the seasonal changes and make effective use of the available pastures in the different places. When the pastures were exhausted or unused in the one place, they moved their herds and flocked to the new areas. And this continuous movement has also allowed the pastures to recover. It prevented their overuse. Gaddi sheep being sheared. By September, the Gaddi shepherds come down from the high meadows. Meadows को धर्स बोलते हैं, DHARS. On the way down, they halt for a while to have the sheep sheared. The sheep are bathed and cleaned before the wool is cut. The Gaddi is waiting for the shearing to begin. Ohri Valley near the Palanpur in Himachal Pradesh. अब नए वर्ड्स क्या हैं? बहावर, अ ड्राई फॉरेस्टेड एरिया बिलो द फूट हिल्स ऑफ द गढ़वाल एंड कुमाऊं. और बुग्याल क्या होता है? वास्ट मिडोज इन द हाई माउंटेन्स on the plateaus, plains, and deserts. Not all the pastoralists operated in the mountains. They were also to be found in the plateaus, plains, and deserts of India. Dhangas were an important pastoral community of Maharashtra in the early 20th century. Their population in this reign was estimated to be 4,67,000. Most of them were shepherds. Some were blanket weavers and still others were buffalo herders. The Dhanga shepherds stayed in the central plateau of Maharashtra during the monsoon. This was a semi-arid region with low rainfall and poor soil. It was covered with a thorny scrub, nothing but the dry crops like the bajra could be sown here. In the monsoon, this tract became a vast grazing ground for the Dhangar flocks. By October, the Dhangars harvested their bajra and started on their move west. After a march of about a month, they reached the Konkan. This was a flourishing agriculture tract with a high rainfall and the rich soil. Here, the shepherds were welcomed by the Konkani peasants. After the Kharif harvest was cut at this time, the fields had no the fields had to be fertilized and made ready for the Rabi harvest. The Dhangar flocks manured the fields and fed on the stubble. The Konkani peasants also gave supplies of the rice, which the shepherds took back to the plateau where the grain was scarce. And with the onset of the monsoons, the Dhangas left the Konkan and the coastal areas with their flocks and returned to their settlements on the dry plateau. The sheep could not tolerate the wet monsoon conditions. अब इसमें नए वर्ड्स क्या आते हैं? खरीफ, द ऑटम क्रॉप especially harvested between the September and the October. The rabi, the spring crop especially harvested after March. The stubble, the lower ends of the grain stalks left in the ground after harvesting. The Raika camels grazing on the Thar desert in the western Rajasthan. Only camels can survive on the dry and thorny bushes that can be found here, but to get enough food they have to graze over a very extensive area. फिर एक सोर्स है जिसके हिसाब से इन कर्नाटका एंड आंध्र प्रदेश अगेन द ड्राई सेंट्रल प्लेट्यू was covered with stone and grass inhabited by the cattle, goat and sheep herders. The Golas herded cattle. The Kurumas and the Kurubas reared the sheep and goats, and sold the woven blankets. They lived near the woods, cultivated small patches of the land, engaged in a variety of petty trades, and took care of their herds. Unlike the mountain pastoralist, it was not the cold and the snow that defined the seasonal rhythm of their movement. Rather, it was the alteration of the monsoon and the dry season. In the dry season, they moved to the coastal tracts and left when the rain came. Only buffaloes liked the swampy, wet conditions of the coastal areas during the monsoon months. Other herds had to be shifted to the dry plateau at this time. The Banjaras were yet another well known group of the graziers. They were to be found in the villages of Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and Maharashtra. In the search of the good pasture land for the cattle, they moved over long distances, selling plough, cattle, and other goods to villages in exchange for the grain and fodder. The accounts of the many travelers tell us about the life of pastoral groups. In the early 19th century, the Buchanan visited the Golas, Gullas, during his travel through Mysore. He wrote, their families live in small villages near the skirt of the woods, where they cultivate a little ground and keep some of the cattle, selling in the towns the produce of the dairy. The families are very numerous, 7 to 8 young men in each being common. 2 to 3 of these attend the flocks in the woods, while the remainder cultivate their fields and supply the towns with the firewood and with the straw for the thatch. ठीक है. In the deserts of the Rajasthan lived the Raikas. The rainfall in the region was meager and uncertain. On cultivated land, harvest fluctuated every year. Over vast stretches, no crop could be grown. So the Raikas combined the cultivation with pastoralism. During the monsoons, the Raikas of the Barmar, Jaisalmer, Jodhpur, and Bikaner stayed in their home villages where the pasture was available. By October, when these grazing grounds were dry and exhausted, they moved out in search of other pastures and water and returned again during the next monsoon. One group of Raikas, known as the Maru Desert, the Raikas herded camels, and another group reared the sheep and the goat. A camel herder in a settlement. This is on the Thar Desert near the Jaisalmer in Rajasthan. The camel herders of the region are Maru Desert Raikas, and their settlement is called Adandi, Dhandi. So we see that the life of these pastoral groups was sustained by a careful consideration of a host of factors. They had to judge how long the herds could stay in one area and know where they could find water and pasture. They needed to calculate the timing of their movements and ensure that they could move through different territories. They had to set up a relationship with farmers on the way so that the herds could graze in harvested fields and manure the soil. They combined a range of different activities, cultivation, trade, and herding to make their living. How did the life of pastoral change under the colonial rule? A camel fair at Balotra in western Rajasthan. Camel herders came to the fair to sell and buy camels. The Maru Raikas also displayed their expertise in training their camels. Horses from Gujarat are also brought for sale at this fair. A camel fair at Pushkar. The Maldhari herders moving in search of pastures. Their villages are in the Rann of Kutch. A Maru Raika genealogist with a group of Raikas. The genealogist recounts the history of the community. Such oral traditions give pastoral groups their own sense of identity. These oral traditions can tell us about how a group looks at its own past. अच्छा, एक सोर्स है वो कहता है कि अंडर कॉलोनियल रूल द लाइफ ऑफ द पेस्टोरल चेंज ड्रामेटिकली. Their grazing ground shrank, their movement were regulated, and the revenue they had to pay increased. Their agriculture stock declined, and their trades and craft were adversely affected. How? First, the colonial state wanted to transform all the grazing lands into the cultivated farms. The land revenue was one of the main sources of its finance. By expanding cultivation, it could increase its revenue collection. It could at the same time produce the more jute, cotton, wheat, and other agriculture produce that were required in England. To colonial officials, all uncultivated land appeared to be unproductive. It produced neither revenue nor the agriculture produce. It was seen as a waste land that needed to be brought under cultivation. From the mid 19th century, the waste land rules were enacted in the various parts of the country, and by these rules, uncultivated lands were taken over and given to select individuals. These individuals were granted various concessions and encouraged to settle these lands. Some of them were made headmen of the villages in the newly cleared areas. In most areas, the land taken over were actually grazing tract used regularly by the pastoralist. So, expansion of the cultivation inevitably meant the decline of the pastures and a problem for pastoral. Secondly, by the mid 19th century, various forest acts were also being enacted in the different provinces, and through these acts, some forests which produced commercially valuable timber like deodar or sal were declared reserved. No pastoral was allowed access to these forests. Other forests were classified as protected. In these, some customary grazing rights of the pastoral were granted, but their movements were severely restricted. The colonial officials believed that grazing destroyed the saplings and the young shoots of the trees that germinated on the forest floor. The herds trampled over the saplings and munched away the shoots. This prevented new trees from growing. These forest acts changed the life of pastoral. They were now prevented from entering many forests that had earlier provided valuable forage for their cattle. Even in the areas they were allowed entry, their movements were regulated and they needed a permit for entry. The timing of the entry and departure um, was was in an area even if forage was available. The grass was succulent and the undergrowth in the forest was ample. They had to move because the forest department permits that had been issued to them now ruled their lives. The permits specified the periods in which they could be legally within a forest. If they overstayed, they were liable to finances. ठीक है, फाइन्स. अब देखो यहाँ एक चीज़ है जो मैं बताऊँगी कि कॉलोनियल रूल एंड द पास्टोरल लाइफ. ठीक है. H.S. गिब्सन, ही इज़ अ डिप्यूटी कंजर्वेटर ऑफ फॉरेस्ट दार्जिलिंग. उन्होंने कुछ लिखा है 1913 में. Forest which is used for grazing cannot be used for any other purpose and is unable to yield timber and fuel, which are the main legitimate forest produce. ठीक है. Customary rights का मतलब क्या होता है? Rights that people are used to by the custom and traditions. ठीक है. फिर एक सोर्स कहता है कि स्पेसिफाइड and the number of days they could spend in the forest was limited. Pastorals could no longer remain in an area even if the forage was available. The grass was succulent and the undergrowth in the forest was ample. They had to move because the forest department permits that had been issued to them now rule their lives. The permit specified the periods in which they could be legally within a forest. If they overstayed, they were liable to finances. Third, the British officials were suspicious of the nomadic people. They distrusted the mobile craftsmen and traders who hawked their goods in villages and pastorals who changed their places of residence every season, moving in the search of the good pastures for their herds. The colonial government wanted to rule over a settled population. They wanted the rural people to live in villages in a fixed place with a fixed right on particular fields. Such a population was easy to identify and control. Those who were settled were seen as peaceable and law abiding. Those who were nomadic were considered to be criminal. In 1871, the colonial government in India passed the Criminal Tribes Act, and by this act, many communities of the craftsmen, the traders, and pastoral were classified as criminal tribes. They were stated to be the criminal by nature and birth, and once this act came into force, these communities were expected to live only in the notified village settlements. They were not allowed to move out without a permit. The village police kept a continuous watch on them. Fourth, to expand its revenue income, the colonial government looked for every possible source of taxation. So, tax was imposed on land, canal water, salt, on trade goods, and even on animals. Pastorals had to pay tax on every animal they grazed on the pastures. In the most pastoral tract of India, grazing tax was introduced in the mid 19th century. The tax per head of cattle went up rapidly, and the system of collection was made increasingly efficient. In the decades between 1850 and 1880s, the right to collect the tax was auctioned out to the contractors. These contractors tried to extract as high a tax as they could to recover the money they had paid to the state and earn as much profit as they could. Within the year, by the 1880s, the government began collecting taxes directly from the pastoral. Each of them was given a pass to enter a grazing tract. A cattle herder had to show the pass and pay the tax. The number of cattle heads he had and the amount of tax he paid was entered on the pass. In the 1920, a Royal Commission on Agriculture reported the extent of the area available for grazing has gone down tremendously with the extension of area under the cultivation because of increasing population, extension of irrigation facilities, acquiring the pastures for government purposes, for example, defense, industries, and agriculture experimental farms. Now, breeders find it difficult to raise the large herds, thus, their earnings have gone down. The quality of the livestock has deteriorated, dietary standards have fallen, and indebtedness has increased. How did these changes affect the life of the pastoral? These measures led to a serious shortage of pastures when the grazing lands were taken over and turned into the cultivable fields. The available area of pasture land declined. Similarly, the reservation of the forest meant that the shepherds and the cattle herders could no longer freely pasture their cattle in the forest. As pasture lands disappeared under the plough, the existing animal stock had to feed on whatever grazing land remained, and this led to continuous intensive grazing of these pastures, especially the nomadic pastoral grazed the animals in one area and moved to another area. These pastoral movements allowed time for the natural restoration of vegetation growth. When restrictions were imposed on pastoral movements, the grazing lands came to be continuously used and the quality of the pastures declined. This in turn created a further shortage of the forage for animals and the militarization of animal stock. Underfed cattle died in large numbers during scarcity and famine. The pastorals in India. देखो पेस्टोरल्स कौन कौन से थे देखो। तुम्हारे सबसे नॉर्थ में तो गुज्जर थे, ये तुम्हारे जम्मू कश्मीर और लद्दाख वाले एरिया में। फिर तुम्हारे हिमाचल प्रदेश में गद्दी है, उत्तराखंड में भोतिया एंड गुज्जर्स हैं, और फिर तुम्हारे ये बीच में मध्य प्रदेश और यूपी और ये बीच में जो है बंजारस हैं। मध्य प्रदेश में भी बंजारस हैं, गुजरात नहीं राजस्थान में रायकास हैं, गुजरात में मलधारी है, और महाराष्ट्र में दंगर्स हैं, DHANGARS दंगर्स। और फिर तुम्हारे ये आंध्र प्रदेश और ये कर्नाटका में इस ये रीजन में कुरुमस कुरुबस एंड गोलास, और फिर तुम्हारे फर्दर ईस्ट में मोमपास। ठीक है। अब हाउ डिड द पेस्टोरल कोप विद दिस चेंजेस? ठीक है, चेंजेस आ तो गए बट उनको हैंडल कैसे किया, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट सवाल है। The pastorals reacted to these changes in a variety of the ways. Some reduced the number of the cattle in their herds since there was not enough pasture to feed the large numbers. Others discovered new pastures when the movement to the old grazing grounds became difficult. After 1947, the camel and the sheep herding Raikas, for instance, could no longer move into the Sindh and graze the camels on the banks of the Indus as they had done earlier. फिर the new political boundaries between the India and Pakistan stopped the movement, so they had to find new places to go in. In recent years, they have been migrating to Haryana, where the sheep can graze on agriculture field after the harvest occurred. This is the time that the fields need manure that the animals provide. Over the years, some richer pastoral began buying land and settling down, giving up their nomadic life. Some became settled peasants cultivating land, others took to more extensive trading. Many poor pastorals, on the other hand, borrowed money from the money lenders to survive. At times, they lost their cattle and sheep and became laborers working on the fields or in small towns. Yet, pastoral not only continue to survive in many regions, their numbers have expanded over the recent decades. When pasture lands in one place was close to them, they changed the direction of the movement, reduced the size of the herd, combined the pastoral activity with the other forms of income and adapted to the changes in the modern world. Many ecologists believe that in dry regions and in the mountains, pastoralism is still ecologically the most viable form of life. Such changes were not experienced only by pastoral communities in India. In many other parts of the world, the new laws and the settlement patterns forced the pastoral communities to alter their lives. How did the pastoral communities elsewhere cope with these changes in the modern world? ये question हमें पता होना चाहिए. Phil, let us move to Africa, where over half the world pastoral population live. Even today, over 22 million Africans depend on some form of pastoral activity for their livelihood. They include the communities like Bedouins, Bedouins, Berbers, Berbers, Masai, Maasai, Somali, Boran, Boran, and Turkana. Most of them now live in the semi-arid grasslands or the arid deserts where the rain-fed agriculture is difficult. They raise cattle, camel, goat, sheep, donkey, and they sell milk, meat, animal skin, and wool. Some also earn through trade and transport. Others combine pastoral activity with agriculture. Still others do a variety of odd jobs to supplement the meager and uncertain earnings from pastoralism. Like pastoralists in India, the lives of African pastoralists have changed dramatically over the colonial and the post-colonial periods. What have these changes been? Pastoralism in Africa, a view of Maasai land with the Kilimanjaro in the background. Forced by changing conditions, the Maasai have grown dependent on the food produced in the other areas like maize, meal, rice, potato, cabbage. Traditionally, the Maasai frowned upon this. The Maasai believed that tilling the land for the crop farming is a crime against nature. Once you cultivate the land, it is no longer suitable for grazing. Where we will discuss some of these changes by looking at one pastoral community, the Maasai, in some detail. The Maasai cattle herders live primarily in East Africa, 3 lakhs in southern Kenya, and another 1,50,000 in Tanzania. We will see how the new laws and regulations took away their land and restricted their movement. This affected their lives in times of drought and even reshaped their social relationships. Where have the grazing lands gone? One of the problems the Maasais, MAASAIS, have faced is the continuous loss of their grazing lands. Before colonial times, the Maasai land stretched over a vast area from the North Kenya to the steppes of northern Tanzania. In the late 19th century, European imperial powers scrambled for the territorial possession in Africa, slicing up the region into different colonies. In 1885, the Maasai land was cut into half with an international boundary between the British Kenya and the German Tanganyika. Subsequently, the best growing lands were gradually taken over for white settlement and the Maasai were pushed into the smaller area in the in South Kenya and North Tanzania. The Maasai lost about 60% of their pre-colonial lands. They were confined to an arid zone with uncertain rainfall and the poor pastures, है ना. अब इससे पहले देखो ये देख लो थोड़ा कि कुछ पेस्टोरल कम्युनिटीज़ थी इन अफ्रीका. The inset shows the location of Maasais, MAASAIS in Kenya and Tanzania. अब देखो तंगानिका पर क्या था. On Tanganyika, Britain conquered what had been German East Africa during the First World War. In 1919, Tanganyika came under British control. It attained independence in 1961 and united with the Zanzibar to form Tanzania in 1964. ठीक है. Now, from the late 19th century, the British colonial government in the East Africa also encouraged the local peasant communities to expand cultivation. As the cultivation expanded, the pasture lands were turned into cultivated fields. In the pre-colonial times, the Maasai pastoral had dominated the agriculture neighbors both economically and politically. By the end of colonial rule, the situation had reversed. Large areas of grazing land were also turned into game reserves like the Masai Mara and the Samburu National Park in Kenya and Serengeti Park in Tanzania. The pastorals were not allowed to enter these reserves. They could neither hunt animals nor graze the herds in those areas. Very often, these reserves were in areas that had traditionally been regular grazing grounds for Maasai herds. The Serengeti National Park, for instance, was created over 14,760 kilometers of Maasai grazing land. अब देखो, without grass, lively stock, the cattle, goat and sheep are malnourished, which means less food available for families and their children. The areas hardest hit by drought and food shortage are in the vicinity of Amboseli National Park, which last year generated approximately 240 million Kenyan shillings from tourism. In addition, the Kilimanjaro water project cuts through the communities of this area, but the villages are barred from using the water for irrigation or for livestock. ठीक है, फिर देखो एक सोर्स कहता है कि pastoral communities elsewhere in Africa face similar problems. In Namibia, in southwest Africa, the Kauko land, herders traditionally moved between the Kauko land and the nearby Ovambo land, and they sold skin, meat, and other trade products in the neighboring markets. All this was stopped with a new system of territorial boundaries that restricted movements between the regions. The nomadic cattle herders of the Kauko land in Namibia complained, "We have difficulty, we cry, we are imprisoned, we do not know why we are locked up, we are in jail, we have no place to live. We cannot get meat from the south, our sleeping skins cannot be sent out. Ovambo land is closed for us. We live in Ovambo land for a long time. We want to take our cattle there, also our sheep and goats. The borders are closed. The borders press us heavily. We cannot live." अच्छा, ये जो टाइटल है मसाई जो है, इट इज़ डिराइव फ्रॉम द वर्ड मास. मसाई मीन्स माई पीपल. They are traditionally nomadic and pastoral people who depend on the milk and meat for subsistence. High temperature combined with low rainfall to create conditions which are dry, dusty, and extremely hot. The drought conditions are common in these semi-arid lands of equatorial heat, and during such times, the pastoral animals die in large numbers. फिर देखो क्या है, द लॉस ऑफ द फाइनेस्ट ग्रेजिंग लैंड्स एंड द वाटर रिसोर्सेज क्रिएटेड प्रेशर ऑन द स्मॉल एरिया ऑफ द लैंड that the Maasai were confined within. The continuous grazing within a small area inevitably meant a deterioration of the quality of the pastures. Fodder was always in the short supply. Feeding the cattle became a persistent problem. The borders are closed. In the 19th century, African pastoralists could move over vast areas in search of pastures. When the pastures were exhausted in one place, they moved to a different area to graze the cattle. From the late 19th century, the colonial government began imposing various restrictions on their mobility. Like the Maasai, other pastoral groups were also forced to live within the confines of special reserves. The boundary of these reserves became the limits within which they could now move. They were not allowed to move out with their stock without special permits, and it was difficult to get the permits without trouble and harassment. Those found guilty of disobeying the rules were severely punished. The pastorals were not allowed to enter the markets in the white area. In many regions, they were prohibited from participating in any form of trade. The white settlers and the European colonists saw the pastoral as dangerous and savage, people with whom all contact had to be minimized. Cutting off all the links was, however, never really possible because white colonists had to depend on the black labor to bore the mines and build the roads in the town. The new territorial boundaries and the restrictions imposed on them suddenly changed the life of pastoral. These adversely affected. अब देखो एक source के हिसाब से क्या है. In most places in colonial Africa, the police were given the instructions to keep a watch on the movement of pastoral and prevent them from entering wide area. The following is one such instruction given by a magistrate to the police in Southwest Africa, restricting restricting the movements of the pastoral of the Kauko land in Nambia. Press to enter the territory, passes to enter the territory should not be given to these natives unless exceptional circumstances necessitate the entry. The objective of the above proclamation is to restrict the number of the natives entering the territory and to keep a check on them, and ordinary visiting passes should therefore never be issued to them. The Kauko Belt permits to enter magistrate to the police station commanders of the Oju. अच्छा ये इतना इम्पोर्टेंट नहीं है. फिर देखो क्या है. The pastorals in the modern world है ना. Both the pastoral and trading activities, earlier the pastorals not only look after the animal herds but traded in the various products. The restrictions under the colonial rule did not entirely stop the trading activities, but they were now subject to various restrictions when the pastures dry. The drought affects the life of the pastorals everywhere. When the rains fail and pastures are dry, cattle are likely to starve unless they can be moved to areas where the forage is available. That is why traditionally pastorals are nomadic. They move from place to place, and this nomadism allows them to survive the bad times and avoid the crisis. But from the colonial period, the Maasai were bound down a fixed area, confined within a reserve, and prohibited from moving in search of pastures. They were cut off from their best grazing lands and forced to live within a semi arid tract prone to frequent drafts. Since they could not shift their cattle to places where pastures were available, large numbers of the Maasai cattle died of starvation and disease in these years of drought. An inquiry in 1930 showed that the Maasai in the Kenya possessed 7,20,000 cattle, 8,20,000 sheep, 1,71,000 donkey. In just 2 years of severe drought, 1933 and 34, over half the cattle in Maasai Reserve died. As the area of the grazing land shrank, the adverse effect of the drought increased in intensity. The frequent bad years led to a steady decline of the animal stock of the pastoral. Not all were equally affected. ये एक अलग topic है. In Maasai land, as elsewhere in Africa, not all the pastorals were equally affected by the changes in the colonial period. In the pre-colonial times, the Maasai society was divided into two social categories, elders and warriors. The elders formed a ruling group and met in periodic councils to decide on the affairs of the community and settle disputes. The warriors consisted of young people, mainly responsible for the protection of the tribe. They defended the community and organized cattle raid. Raiding was important in a society where cattle was wealth. It is through the raids that the power of different pastoral group was asserted. Young men came to be recognized as members of the warrior class when they proved their manliness by raiding the cattle of other pastoral groups and participating in wars. They, however, were subject to the authority of the elders. Uh, Figure 16. Note how the warriors wear the traditional deep red shukas, brightly beaded Maasai jewelry, and carry 5 foot steel tipped spears. These long pleats of intricately plaited hair are tinted red with ochre. As per tradition, they face east to honor the rising sun. The warriors are in charge of society security, while boys are responsible for herding livestock. During the drought season, both warriors and the boys assume responsibility for herding livestock. To administer the affairs of the Maasai, the British introduced a series of measures that had important implications. They appointed chiefs of different subgroups of Maasai who were made responsible for the affairs of the tribe. The British imposed various restrictions on raiding and warfare. Consequently, the traditional authority of both the elders and the warriors was adversely affected. The chiefs appointed by the colonial government often accumulated wealth over time. They had a regular income with which they could buy animals, goods, and land. They lent money to the poor neighbors who needed cash to pay taxes. Many of them began living in the towns and became involved in trade. Their wives and children stayed back in the villages to look after the animals. These chiefs managed to survive the devastations of the war and drought. They had both pastoral and non pastoral income and could buy animals when their stocks was depleted. But the life history of the poor pastoral who depended only on their livestock was different. Most often, they did not have the resources to hide over the bad times. In the times of war and famine, they lost nearly everything. They had to go looking for work in the towns. And some eked out a living as charcoal burners, others did odd jobs. The lucky could get more regular work in road or building construction. The social changes in the Maasai society occurred at the two levels. First, the traditional difference based on age between the elders. Even today, the young men go through an elaborate ritual before they become warriors, although actually it is no longer common. They must travel throughout the sections region for about 4 months, ending with an event where they run to the homestead and enter with an attitude of a raider. During the ceremony, the boys dress in loose clothing and dance non-stop throughout the day. This ceremony is a transition into a new age. Girls are not required to go through such a ritual. And warriors was disturbed. Though it did not break down entirely, second, a new distinction between the wealthy and the poor pastoral developed. Conclusion. So we see that pastoral communities in different parts of the world are affected in a variety of different ways by changes in the modern world. New laws and new borders affect the patterns of their movement. With increasing restriction on their mobility, pastoral find it difficult to move in search of pastures. As pastures land disappear, grazing becomes a problem, while the pastures that remain dead to right through continuous overgrazing, the times of drought become the times of crisis when the cattle die in large numbers. Yet the pastoral do adapt to the new times. They change the path of the annual movement, reduce the cattle numbers, press for rights to enter new areas, exert political pressure on the government for relief, subsidy, and other forms of support, and demand a right in the management of the forest and water. The resources. Pastorals are not the relics of the past. They are not people who have no place in the modern world. Environmental and economists have increasingly come to recognize that pastoral nomadism is a form of life that is perfectly suited to many hilly and dry regions of the world. A Raika shepherd on the Jaipur highway. Heavy traffic on highway has made migration of shepherds a new experience. That's all for today. Thank you.